Two Middle-Aged Men in Cleveland, episode 123. Well, that's not hard to remember, is it, Ted? There we go. We need that as we get that older age.
You know who that reminds me of?
Michael Jackson?
Ronnie Duncan.
1, 2, 3, it's me. 3, 2, 1, I'm done. I interned with Ronnie Duncan, by the way, at Channel 19.
I worked with Ronnie Duncan at Channel 19.
I know. We both have very good stories. I'll say it as nice as I possibly can. It was an interesting experience with Ronnie, to say the least. Very talented man, but yeah, different. Very different. So
Ronnie had a style all his own.
He did. He did. Love boxing. Really did. Love boxing.
Slam Duncan.
Slam Duncan. Ted, 123. Obviously, we haven't done this for a couple of weeks. We did it sparingly, but I had to go into the numbers game. So
yeah,
when you think of the number 23, obviously, when it comes to Cleveland jerseys, I think there's certainly one person that comes to mind, and his name rhymes with LeBron James. So, but the question I have for you, it's a little bit of a test.
Sure.
Who are other 23s that might have played for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Oh, for the Cavaliers.
You have a shot. You got a decent shot. There's 3 guys. I'll just say 3 guys that I think you have a chance to remember.
For some reason, there's a guy, his first name was Henry. Am I close on that? Or is that not even right?
No, I think you're thinking of Henry James.
Henry James. Okay. What was he?
Not.
He
was not 23.
23. Okay.
No.
World Be Free wasn't 23, was he?
Was not.
Okay.
No.
All right. Well, I'll just stop calling off random Cavaliers and let you fill me in.
John Morton. Remember Johnny Morton?
Didn't he have a steakhouse downtown?
Yeah, it's outstanding. The same name, not the same cat.
Oh.
Tyrone Corbin. Remember him?
Tyrone Corbin. Sure I do.
23.
Phoenix.
And not to be confused with the football player, but Derek Anderson, who played for Kentucky. Do you remember him? He played a brief stint with us, was like a small forward. Yeah, those are some very interesting ones.
Yeah. Boy.
How about for the Tribe?
I knew you'd ask this.
There's 2 that wore the uniform for quite a long time. One guy wore it for 9 years, played from 09 to 18. Another guy wore it from 81 to 88. And he liked to crouch down. That's my only
crouch down. You talking about Ron Hassey? No, Ron Hassey was 9.
No.
I don't know.
Same position. Chris Bando. How about that one?
Bando, that's him. Yes.
Listen to this list of 23s for the Guardians Indians. This is pretty good. Vic Wirtz played on the 54 team.
Sure.
How about Lou Piniella?
How
about that? Oscar Gamble, Mr. Hare, Chris Bando, Louis Medina. I know he's always one of your favorites. Louis Medina. He played great for 1 year. Hard hitting Mark Whitten.
Oh, I love Mark Whitten.
One of the greatest baseball names ever, Julio Franco.
Julio.
David, he means justice. Justice will be served. He did that from 97 to 2000. This guy's now back on the radio broadcast for the Guardians. Ellis Burks.
Yeah, he's there every so often. Sure.
Michael Brantley, who we never should have let go.
Right.
And Bo Naylor this year. And then a guy that
he is one of my favorite players.
Bo Naylor?
Bo Naylor. Yeah, him and Josh.
Yeah, I do like
favorite players.
They're actually, end of the year, Bo Naylor was hitting the heck out of the ball.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I thought I've done a good job of following sports, but maybe not. Dan Johnson in 20 and 21 for the Guardians?
No idea who that is.
I don't know who that is. I must be missing something.
Bo Naylor and Josh Naylor. I've told I mentioned to my kids that they're my favorite players. They ask me why. I don't tell them.
They don't need to know.
No.
They have no idea. It's fine. It's one of those things, once again, it's your joke. They don't need to know the insides of it.
My wife just shakes her head.
Of course.
Yes.
How about for your Cleveland helmets?
Cleveland helmets 23
You got a shot at one.
is either a running back or a safety or a cornerback or something like that.
Yes.
What can you give me some playing years?
Yeah, he played. Let's see. He played in the 2000s for us, and then he played for one of our rivals. The end of his career.
Not Joe Hayden.
Yes.
Joe Hayden.
Well done.
There you go.
How about some Hank Poteet? Martin Emerson, current player.
Yeah.
Andrew Sendejo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then some Troy Hill. And we liked him so much that we received him in a trade and then traded him, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the next year back to the same team.
Well,
so there you go. So there's your jersey updates for number 23.
There you go.
That's a fun one. Well done.
We missed a week, but every so often things happen and we come back when we come back.
That's correct. That's the
Here
bonus about our stuff.
Did we miss anything?
Well, the Cavaliers are going to be putting their practice facility in downtown Cleveland. I don't know if you knew about that or not. They're going to be part of that new project. I don't think it has anything to do with the stadium, but they want to move their practice facility, which is in Independence, to almost like the Flats.
How are they? How do the folks at Independence feel about that?
Oh, I don't think you probably want to talk to them right now. I can imagine they're not as super excited. They like that. As we all know, Ted, it all comes back to dollars and cents, and they'll be tax money.
De Niro. Yeah.
We're not going to talk about the Browns, who obviously, as we record this broadcast, played yesterday. If you want to hear some good breakdown of a crappy team, you're going to have to listen to another podcast. We're not going to fill our airwaves with that. That's
No.
Not doing it.
I wonder what any of our kids speak analysts would say about that.
I'm interested to hear that. We do have the bye week coming up, so I thought maybe we could connect with those two young men probably in 2 weeks for our next podcast and get their thoughts. It's like the beginning season thoughts from
there you go.
You have a great team to realizing that your team is still not very good.
Yeah. What a terrible week. Well, let's move on and let's get to what we have on this week's show. Investment versus purchase. We have an amazing stat that I'm going to share in Klopp's Klips regarding that. This week's overachiever has a chin up on the rest of us. An errant open mic comment. There, go figure.
Oh,
That's
boy.
part of the Misspeak of the week. John Grabowski is here with another Cleveland history lesson. Dusty Sloan will highlight another moment in Cleveland sports. And pro sports handicapper John Ryan is here. He has an amazing story of survival.
And now, a woman's perspective.
How do you keep your husband from reading your email? Rename the mail folder Instruction Manuals.
This has been a woman's perspective.
Said we are overachieving and we're having a great time doing it. And we found an overachiever who is 45-year-old man from Colorado. And get this, he set the world record for chin-ups in an hour with 1,010.
Okay.
I want to break this down. So this gentleman from Colorado did 1,010 chin-ups in 1 hour.
Uh-huh.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That means Frank Sagona, sounds like he's involved with the mafia, averaged almost 17 chin-ups per minute as he beat the previous record of 993 set in 2011.
I don't think it says in there, but he did all of those with cement shoes on.
Oh, I bet he did. And actually, I don't think we hear about the previous champ.
No.
I think he's gone.
He's thou who shall not be named.
He's buried somewhere, but
by the way,
that is impressive. Okay, let's have this conversation.
Yeah.
When is the last time you did a chin-up?
I don't know that I've ever done a chin up.
I did chin ups when I was younger because my body weight was much less.
Yeah.
I remember trying to do a chin up. Oh gosh, it was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought my right arm was going to fall off. I don't know if I could do one chin up. And I have been working out a little bit more, trying to get myself back into shape. And yeah, I'm not at chin up level. No.
1,010 is 1,011 more than I can do.
That would take me probably the next 25 years. So there we go. Well, hats off to Frank Sagona. Well done. 45 years old, set the world record, 1,010 chin ups in an hour. That's overachieving.
Blah blah blah.
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 Today's guest has been handicapping professional sports for over 28 years. Our guest has created an algorithm, program, and database which changes sports betting into an investment strategy while promoting safe betting with the philosophy of betting with your head and not over it. Our guest has started the 2023 football season extremely well. In college football, he is 24-12, ATS with 67% winners. Our guest is 90-45. That means he's won 67% of his bets in college football over the last 3 seasons. He's also done extremely well in the NFL so far this season at a record of 12-5. Our guest is a 22-year survivor of a rare blood cancer in which he was told he had 6 to 12 months to live, and we look forward to hearing about his battle. Our guest has over 12,000 followers on Twitter, over 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, and our guest can be heard on many different radio stations and media outlets across the U.S., talking sports betting and providing you with informative and usable betting information. Let's talk with John Ryan. John, thank you so much for taking time with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks very much for having me, and I greatly appreciate being on your show. It's truly an honor, and that introduction is very humbling.
John, you and I became friends about 3 years ago, and I've wanted to have you on very much so in the past couple of years. And now with legalized sports betting, it makes sense here in Ohio. But before we start to talk about betting, let's talk about your in your analytical betting system. Let's talk about with the listeners your story on fighting cancer 22 years ago.
Thanks. And this will dovetail right into why I do what I do today. And in 2000, December 12th at exactly 5:45 p.m., I was told I was in a grave condition and had the 6 to 12 months to live. The blood cancer is called multiple myeloma. At the time, I was at the peak of my career, under the age of 40. And it was hard to believe. I was a former All-American athlete, and to be sick at that degree was just unimaginable. So there was an initial denial when the doctor did tell me that, you're in a grave situation, and I probably can't repeat what I probably said to him, but it was shocking. I was actually cleaning up my stuff in my hospital room where I was stayed for 10 days. And, I'm walking around and he's going over my results and saying, your protein levels are way up. And I'm thinking, as an athlete, even a former athlete, that has to be good. So whatever was bothering me is now gone. And then he told me that I had to sit down. That's when he told me. So it was very shocking. Fortunately for me, the next 2 days, and only 2 days, were the most immense depression you can even imagine. You start thinking really weird stuff. Like, if I'm going out of here, I'm not going to burden my family. Whatever. But then I snapped out of it. And I thought, well, if the good Lord's going to take me, he's not going to be happy with me if I show up at this time of my life on the pearly gates. And I was just determined I was going to just fight with everything I had to try my best to overcome it, at least extend my life a little bit. So that is kind of how it all started. Did a whole bunch of research on where to go. Fortunately, I had really great insurance. I could literally go, out to Cedar Sinai if I wanted to in California. But being on the East Coast here between Boston and essentially Washington, D.C., it is a mecca of some of the best facilities in the world. So it was a blessing to have that all in close proximity to me. And elected to go to Johns Hopkins, who are the doctors that did the first bone marrow transplant in the history of the world. And I felt like I was important to them and not just a number for a clinical trial. A lot of the places I went to, it's all about the clinical trial. And, I didn't necessarily want to feel like just a number. And they made it feel like home. And that was very important to me that, there was that cheerleading, so to speak, that we want to support you as much as you can and get through this. And, they obviously did a great job. So the process was to go through some initial chemo to get the cancer down. So this is a cancer basically of the immune system, too much plasma in the bone marrow. And then once that starts happening, then it starts crowding out reds, whites, and everything else in your bone marrow. So when I was diagnosed with this, I was extraordinarily anemic and didn't have much immune system to fight anything off. And that's what put me in the hospital in the first place with a really weird form of pneumonia. So, we went through the gauntlet of chemo. It was, it looked like orange Gatorade. In fact, that's what the kids called it. And it was 4 days, 96 hours continuously. So, they hooked you up and, 4 days, you didn't take a shower, nothing. You just, that's what was going on. So it worked very well the first month, but then the cancer is a form of the immune system. So it immuned itself to the chemo that I was getting. And then it acted like it was really angry that I bugged it. And it went really, really high. And that was, probably one of the lowest moments when you think you're starting to get an edge and beating it. And then all of a sudden you throw a pick six. And I guess that's kind of what it felt like. But then a drug called thalidomide had been discovered somehow between a patient and his wife, who was a lawyer, that this might work for this particular cancer. Thalidomide was in the 1950s, and it was used for morning sickness, and it created a birth defect with people in my age group, where you'll see them with very short arms or no arm at all. And I forget what that birth defect is called, but it basically took the drug off the market. Now it's getting back on the market, and when I started taking that at the maximum dose I could possibly take by the FDA standards, and this was part of a clinical trial. So I'm taking 1,600 milligrams of thalidomide a day, twice a day. So it was a ton. I played piano since I was basically 7 years old. Before we did the thalidomide, I was told that I'm going to lose control of my fingers. I won't have any motor ability, probably. I won't be able to feel my feet. Wow. Up to my, and above the knee even, I wouldn't be able to feel. But there was no choice, to be alive for the family. That was the goal. And I still play piano. It never touched my hands, and it only gave me some severe neuropathy in my feet, which I still have today. But one of the things that doctors don't understand to this day is, why was it me? What was special about the situation that got me cured of still an incurable form of blood cancer? So the neuropathy actually got better the last 10 years. Little by little, I noticed that I can wiggle my toes and I can actually feel it. Let's see, where else should I go with this, Ken? You know the story pretty well.
Oh, I do, John. I mean, obviously you've talked about it, and Ted has a question here real quick, but I guess I'll do a quick follow-up. So right now, John, tell people where you're living, I mean, as close as you possibly can to a normal life, correct?
Yeah.
That's
amazing.
amazing.
Most people, they hear the story, they look at me, and I, humbly said, I'm not bragging about myself, but I think I look, pretty healthy. My skin color is certainly not like a sick person. So I'm blessed beyond any possibility of combination of words could ever describe.
Wow.
It's been amazing. The transplant was very difficult. I won't minimize that. It was brutal. They give you enough. Let me just back up 1 second here to make it all fit together.
Sure.
Here. So in November, 11 months after I was diagnosed, I got into a window, thanks to the thalidomide, to harvest my stem cells. So this was deemed impossible 10 months earlier. So went to Hopkins, they harvested them, and then they store them at a temperature called Kelvin. So if you don't know Kelvin, it's very, very cold.
Yes.
So they're stored. Then the plan was to hope that the cancer stayed stable. And because I was younger for this type of cancer, it was a heck of a lot more aggressive. So there was a lot of peaks and valleys during that first 11 months. Fortunately for me, it remained stable. And then, I literally was, I got the call. Literally, I imagine it was, my analogy is like a Major League Baseball player being called up. So I was given 48 hours to get there, and everything at Hopkins is done, almost by the minute. It just was an incredible experience. So December 22nd is when I went there. So it wasn't a situation where, oh, wait, it's the holidays. I'll just wait till after New Year's and then we'll do it then. How would that be? No, it wasn't like that at all. It was, this is your time to give it a shot. And it didn't matter. But it did give it a lot more meaning being a Christian that I was in there over the holidays. I couldn't have any visitors. And it was just, me and my fellow friends on the bone marrow cancer floor.
Yeah.
So the transplant itself was pretty nuts. Malphalon was one of the drugs, and they measured that out scientifically to the where I was taking 36 pills of Malphalon every 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
They woke you up to take more. So that went on for 4 days. Then they gave you, I can't remember the name of the liquid chemo, but the goal was to clean you out of just about everything. You have no whites. You have very few platelets under, around 40, 35,000. And your red count is extraordinarily anemic, to the point that they do give you a transfusion at some point during that 8 days. So you're kind of wiped out. So imagine like a forest fire, and the results of the forest fire is nothing but charred remains. Yeah. And that's how I kind of looked at my bone marrow. And then on 12/27, they give you a new birth certificate because it's a new immune system. And the doctors all sing happy birthday. I don't know if they still do it, but they did it for me and all the other patients. And then they start the process of putting the stem cells back in you. So this was called an autologous transplant. The one where you get a donor is commonly called a mutter. That's an allogeneic transplant. So I was just simply trying to buy time. They felt that the allogeneic one was way too aggressive, and the death rate was very high on that. It was either going to work or I was going to be out of here. And, I at least wanted to see the kids go to kindergarten, all of them. That was my goal, just plain and simple. So, as I said, they froze the stem cells at Kelvin, and then the doctor comes in. I'm telling you, it was like a hot dog vendor at a baseball game. Big silver container in front of him, a strap around his neck and shoulders. And it looked like he was going to sell hot dogs. It really did. So then what they do is they take it from Kelvin and they bring it up to room temperature, and it sounded like bacon on a griddle. And I'll never forget that sound because the crackling was it was loud. It sounded exactly like bacon. Wow. Then they have everything hooked up into a port, which was here in my chest. And they begin the process of putting many bags of these stem cells back into you. You don't feel a thing. It's brought up to your body temperature, and they're not even put in like a machine that you would see. It's just because the machine actually will crush the stem cells. So they literally just use gravity and place the bags above you, and then it just goes right into the port. So it took about, I guess, an hour and a half to get it all done. And then it was a waiting time because it's not instant. So, scientists today don't even know why stem cells do what they do, why they're assigned to be, part of your eye, part of your hair, part of your the skin on your face, recognizing that, oh, there's an injury here, so we need to go, disperse some stem cells there. They still don't know why that happens or how it happens. But lucky for me, it was about another week. The results of my blood work started to slowly improve, and that's normal. It's not a radical change. It takes time to rebuild the forest, so to speak. And that was a multi-year waiting game. It took many years to get to a point where, I could almost say, gee, I almost felt normal today.
Yeah.
Like I remembered it. I think a great example is when I ended up getting home, my first walk was 50 yards and I was exhausted. Again, for me, being, the athlete I once was, it was unacceptable. It just was in my mind, this is not acceptable. And then I literally rested for 15 minutes and then I walked back to the house and then I took a 2-hour nap. So from that point on, and Ken, you know me pretty well, it was always and one. It's never good enough. So the next day I probably walked 60 yards, the next day, 80, and just kept doing that. There was one day where I went maybe a quarter mile months later, and then I was too tired to make it back. So I had a call to get a ride to get back to the house. And of course, the nurse practitioner, said, you got to take it easy. You got to take it a little bit slower, but I don't know any other gear than, fifth gear. So that was pretty crazy time too. It was basically up to about 2009 that Harvard Med then said I was cured. But they were reluctant to do that because it's so unusual. There's only 3 people that have had this that are cured right now and alive.
Wow.
So it's pretty nuts. The other thing that happened along the way was the transplant happened, everything's starting to go well. And then the day before I was going to be dismissed to go home, I spiked a fever. And spiking a fever for a cancer patient is like 99. That major concern. And I begged the nurse practitioner to just, I'll be fine. I'll just be fine. Don't worry about it. I know what I'm doing. So no, you're not going anywhere. And I, stayed kicking and screaming, but then I'm glad that I stayed because my liver stopped. It completely failed. And now I'm facing another life or death situation. And I was, through this whole process, you can tell I was hands-on. I had to know everything about everything, almost to the degree of what the doctors knew, which the process does, how it works. In this particular case, the nurse practitioner was kind of like a second mom to me. And she would read me the riot act when I was, not a good patient, and she would cheer me on when I was a good patient.
Yeah.
So we went over pros and cons. And I have a little bit of a sense of humor too. And I remember she came in and she says, now what are you up to? And I said, well, I haven't had any excitement in 30 days. I thought I'd try this. And that I do remember saying that. Then we did the pros and cons on a sheet of paper of what was the best thing to do. So they were going to try to get a biopsy going down through my heart. If they nicked any of the arteries, I was going to bleed out, and that was it. The other option was to do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, ALK and AST are 2 of the enzyme measures for liver function. They run basically between like 12 and 25. I was at 2,400 and 2,600 on those enzymes. So I wasn't yellow. I still had color in my face and stuff. I didn't have any of that type of symptom on the outside, but the inside, I was obviously very sick. So much to my surprise, I told the nurse that I opted to do nothing. And it was kind of a weird choice for me because I can't handle doing nothing. But it felt like that was the right thing to do. And then the miracle of all miracles happened. And, they were doing blood work on me just about every hour to see where these enzyme levels were going. So I made the decision, and then I just felt a sense of peace that I can't even begin to tell you, that I was accepting what the results were going to be. And if Monday or Tuesday came and that was, they're going to tell me that I'm out of here, then okay, I accept it. But the first test that the, I would say junior resident did of course, extraordinarily smart doctor. I'm not minimizing that at all, but her job was to take the blood and keep testing to see where I was at. And I still had time to change my mind, but not many hours to change my mind. But she came back and she said, "Oh, the machine didn't test it right. I gotta take the blood again." So she took the blood again, and lo and behold, it wasn't a mistake, and the levels had already dropped to 1,800 from 2,400 and 2,800. So over the period of the next basically 36 hours, my liver came back to life.
Wow.
And that truly is the most amazing thing I think I've ever been through. So then I, eventually was allowed to go home, and the recovery was long. Now, I can tell you firsthand that cancer really, really shaped my life and gave me a lot of blessings. I know that sounds crazy to say because cancer is horrific for anybody, but it opened up doors for me that would have never happened. So, like, for example, when I realized I was actually going to live for a couple years at least, and recovering well, I just had this tremendous need to give back, and I got involved with. As you know, Ken, I don't do anything small either. It's
No.
So I found the National Organization of the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation and got involved with their advocacy work down in Washington, D.C. Learned that they get to meet with senators and representatives, along with the families and patients of multiple myeloma. So after the first trip down, the founder of the MMRF wanted me to be the head for the Pennsylvania Coalition, which I, definitely accepted. So what I would do every year was we'd go down there, and there'd be at least 40 to 40, I guess the most we ever had was 46 states represented by this cancer. And my job was to sit down, and it was with the senators. It was never a staffer. It was always the senator. And tell them why we were there, why we were, there taking up his time and what our asks were. And then I would turn it over to the panel to tell their story. The panel meaning the families and the patients, and the need for more cancer awareness and education and research and all that good stuff. So make a long story short, Geraldine Ferraro, who was, I believe, the first woman to ever be a vice presidential candidate, she had this cancer. Unfortunately, it took her life a few years ago. But, I would have never met her. And she was just tremendous. She was a tremendous leader. Ted Kennedy had a family member, had it. So I got to meet him. Just an endless list of people that I just were in awe of, that I was actually in front of them. Arlen Specter was the last one of the meetings I did for advocacy work. And later on, unfortunately, he did have lymphoma, but overcame that, which is a cousin of what this cancer is. So that's one of the, I think, the blessings that was just really cool, because you really, you get to see how Washington works firsthand. I remember the one meeting we had went really well. And then there's a lobbyist from, Big Oil sitting out in the waiting room, waiting to go talk to the senator for his needs. But anyway, the Geraldine Ferraro Cancer Education and Awareness Act was signed, I believe it was 2004 or 5. And it's the only bill to this day, and I think going back all the way to 1990, stood by itself. It wasn't connected to any other, bills that could have it rejected because it was connected to it, like we see so often in Congress now, unfortunately. But it really was something. And it was announced that it was approved. It was 100% vote. While we were there, this was announced. And I tell you, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. It was really, it was like a million times more powerful than the Super Bowl. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool to be part of. The other part of the story is my oldest son, Ryan, now, who is 28, and found out a couple of months ago I'm going to be a grandfather.
Oh, that's awesome, John.
There you go.
I took him down to the advocacy days because the founder of the MMRF had her daughter there the 1 year. And I thought, you know what, this would be really cool for him to experience. I said, you don't have to say anything. You're just going to walk around with me in the group. We're going to go meeting to meeting each day for the next 4 days, and you're just going to take it all in. You don't have to do a thing. So we got to Arlen Specter, the last one, and everybody was telling their stories. And of course, it's very emotional at times. And even Specter was hit by it. And it just shows that those guys aren't just tough guys. They're humans just like us.
Yeah.
So then I remember Senator Specter said, anybody else have anything to say? And up goes Ryan's hand, and I just about dropped. I was just like, oh, you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I want to say something to him. And it was just like he was talking like a person not 10 years old. So he gave his view of what it was like to be a kid and not knowing if your dad's going to be around. And that like blew everybody away, including Specter. And then, make a long story short, he ended up, it circled like wildfire that this kid, gave a speech, more or less. And they made him the honorary advocate of the year.
Wow.
So that was another cool thing.
Wow.
But that was really the first time I'd ever heard him talk about what it was like for him, because what I learned really quick is that for the family members, your friends, loved ones, it's harder on them than it is on you, the patient, because it's helpless. There's nothing they can do for you. And there's really nothing you can say to them like, hey, I'm all right. I'll be okay. Well, they know, they research it. They know what you're up against. They know that what you're trying to make them feel better, but it's a bunch of, it's a bunch of malarkey really when you get to it. But
yeah,
at the time I was diagnosed, I was a chief currency strategist on Wall Street. So given that I had the volumes of chemo that I had endured, there's a thing called chemo brain, which is a side effect and a very acceptable one when you're still alive. So, memory is tweaked a little bit. Sometimes I, can be told something and literally 10 minutes later, I have to be reminded that that was said.
Yeah.
And it's not all the time, but it's enough that I'm very much aware of it, and I try to minimize it.
Great stuff, John. An amazing story of survival. Let's take a pause here, and we'll have a little bit more of the show, and then we're going to bring John back and get his pick of the week.
The most trusted name in journalism, Klopp's Klips.
All right, Ken, here we go. Police in Gainesville, Florida, stopped a car reported stolen a few hours earlier. The car being driven by a 10-year-old boy and his 11-year-old sister.
Oh, jeez.
The mother had reported them missing when she reported the car stolen. Well, the car wasn't stolen and the kids weren't missing. The kids took her car from Northport, Florida, where they live, earlier in the day. They told police they were headed to California because mom took away the girls' electronics for bad behavior.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna deal with this. I'm taking the car. I'm leaving.
Yep.
I'm out.
That's so now what do you do? What do you take away now?
I don't know. Are you ever concerned your kids are just going to take the keys and drive away when you tell them they can't use a device?
No, because I tell them if they leave, don't come back.
Take a bag with you.
Yeah. A Michigan woman, spinning this as a Michigan woman, accidentally dropped her Apple Watch in an outhouse toilet.
Oh, boy.
And what's the one thing worse that can happen here? Well, she went in after it and got stuck.
Oh.
She was heard yelling for help, and police were called. The toilet was removed. A strap was used to get the woman out.
Oh.
Police said, quote, if you lose an item in an outhouse toilet, do not attempt to venture inside the containment area. Serious injury may occur. Thank you, Captain Obvious. By the way, there is no word as to whether or not the watch was returned to the woman.
So I've been going to the metro parks for like longer walks and stuff like that. And there's one time I had to use, obviously, the facilities, and it was an odd house. And I must say, that is the last thing I'd ever want to do.
Oh, my God.
I mean, that's like it looks like almost like a 4-foot drop in there. I'm thinking, you're not getting out of there.
Nope.
Just let it be, man. I know that's, you got the Apple Watch, you spent some money, but not worth it.
Get a one of them, the long hook thing, the
yes,
people that are short for the
retrievers.
Yeah, that thing.
How do you think that call went as well when someone called in? Hey, I'm here in such and such, and I got someone screaming that they're stuck in the toilet. Can you come and help? No.
Yeah.
Nope.
I hope she showered several times.
Oh, gosh.
Well, the iPhone 15 is out, and one man has researched how much money you would have spent if you bought the new version of the iPhone every year. Of course, the first one came out in 2007. Sumit Bihal compared that number with where you'd be if you took that same money and instead of buying an iPhone, you invested in Apple stock each year with the same amount of money. So if you bought the iPhone each year, you'd have spent about 17 grand. Okay?
Okay.
If you bought Apple stock with that same amount of money, you'd have $367 million.
Wow.
How
that's
about
crazy.
How about that?
That's unbelievable.
Ugh.
That's a good one.
That's a head shaker.
Yeah.
And so is this. A high school teacher in Missouri has been placed on leave because of her second job to gain supplemental income. 28-year-old Brianna Coppage joined and performed on the porn site OnlyFans.com.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, district lawyers are investigating, and Coppage admits she's probably done as a teacher. Do you Boy, Captain Obvious is working overtime this week. Coppage made about 42 grand a year as an English teacher and an extra 8 to 10 grand a month from the site.
8 to 10 grand a month.
How about that?
Well, I think I know what job she's doing now.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so no.
I'm done as a teacher. There you go.
Not doing the English teaching there. Now, I want to know, how did the district find out? What? Hey,
that's a good question.
I was on OnlyFans. Not that I have a membership. A friend of mine told me. That's
friend. Sure.
Right.
Yes. Oh my.
Sports. Some scores: 8-3, 7-6, and 4-2. I'm Ted Klopp, and that's news to me.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Cleveland sports history time. We bring in Dr. Dusty Sloan. And Dusty, another interesting one for you with one of your favorite topics to talk about, which is the Cleveland Browns. We move to September 26th, 1977. This is a coincidence. We're all born around then, so that's always a bonus. The Cleveland Browns play their first overtime game and beat the Patriots 30-27. What can you tell us about that victory?
Well, I had to do a lot of research on it because I was only 7 months old at the time. But looking back at it, you see this box score, and Don Cockcroft was a busy guy that night. He kicked 3 field goals, including one in the fourth, give us a lead before it went to overtime, and then he hit the game-winning field goal in overtime. But the player that had the best game for the Browns that day, at least offensively, was Greg Pruitt. And people remember the Pruitts, no relation, but they're running backs. This was before Mike Pruitt, but Greg Pruitt that night ran 26 times for 151 yards, caught 4 passes for 51 yards and a touchdown, and threw a touchdown pass. So he was the big catalyst that night, which helped the Browns win that game.
Overtime, Dusty, it's taken a few different it's changed over the years. Was there anything unique about overtime back in this? Did they just play an extra quarter? Was it sudden death? What'd they do?
Well, obviously there were ties back then, a lot more ties, and unfortunately there were ties more prevalent now because the overtime period is 10 minutes, not 15. But back then it was one period, first team to score wins. You didn't have to score a touchdown back then, as now you have to score at least 6 points to win if you're the first one to score. But no, there wasn't anything really unique necessarily about this, except that it was the first, and it was also a Monday night game. So you had Howard Cosell, I'm sure, on hand to give everyone the proceedings. And let's see what it was early in the season. It was game 2, so it made the Browns 2-0 that year for Forrest Gregg. So good start to the season, which the current Browns franchise can't seem to figure out.
Well, there's no shots there or anything. You're not trying to say anything. All right, here's the last question. Who was the quarterback for the Browns in that game?
Brian Sipe. He was the
Sipe,
quarterback
okay.
then. That was the pre-cardiac kids days, and he did all right. It was 18 for 25, $199, 2 touchdowns, did throw 2 interceptions, but again, quarterbacking wasn't nearly as quote unquote easy as it is in 2023. So, but Brian was clearly the starter back then. He had gotten well past Mike Phipps and trying to make him the starter and things like that. So he led him to victory. And like I said, Greg Pruitt threw the first touchdown pass of the game, which I'm sure and the Browns had to come back from 17-7 down at halftime too. So the place was rocking and got what they wanted at the end of the day.
Brian Sipe, my all-time favorite Cleveland Brown. Has nothing to do with the fact that he was the quarterback when I grew up, but
that was just a bonus.
Or maybe it does. I don't know.
Easy name to remember too.
I'm sorry?
Easy name to remember.
Well, yeah. I was number 17 in any athletic event I took part in anytime it was available.
And number 1 in our hearts.
And I wasn't really all that much of an athlete, so I wasn't number 17 too often. But anyhow, Dusty, thanks so much for your time.
Appreciate it, guys.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Ted, we have some good news.
Okay.
An estimated 80% of older Americans have high blood pressure.
Well,
do we fall into that realm? Is that us? Are we older Americans? I think so.
I hope not. Not yet, anyhow.
A new study from researchers at Iowa State University shows that adding just 3,000 steps a day to your movement can drop your blood pressure by 4 to 7 points. How about that?
How about that?
So that I've been doing a little bit more steps. So 10,000 steps is usually like somewhere around, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles or something like that. So we're talking 3,000 steps. You're looking at maybe just over a mile. So if you walk an extra mile a day, you could drop your blood pressure that much by 4 to 7 points. That's great.
I've noticed that my blood pressure seems to go up and down based on when my son is playing goalie. I don't know if those two are related, but that seems to be.
Well, hey, maybe I have a thought for you. When your son's playing goalie,
start walking.
Should walk around the rink. That'll help.
There you go. I like that.
Classic. Well, Ted, we got some good news. Just walk a few more steps and you'll lower that wonderful blood pressure.
Misspeak of the week now, President Joe Biden. Why does this segment always start with? Anyhow, President Joe Biden recently spoke at the Congressional Black Caucus's Foundation's annual legislative conference. During his speech, he honored the recipients of this year's Phoenix Awards that recognize individuals who have made significant contributions to society. One of the recipients was LL Cool J.
And 2 of the great artists of our time representing the groundbreaking legacy of hip-hop in America, LL Cool J. By the way, that boy's man's got biceps bigger than my thighs. I think he's been.
LL Cool J, Ken.
Just an extra vowel.
Now, I mean, I get that, presidents are usually, with the recent exception of Obama, and I guess Clinton, most presidents are in their 60s or 70s, and so that odds of them knowing who LL Cool J is are low. I get that.
Yeah.
But either he needs to be told to read the darn prompter, or his handlers need to tell him to not ad lib and don't do that nonsense.
It's the same story each time. I mean, I just think he goes rogue on what the prompter is, because I mean, let's be honest, no one's going to add an extra consonant, I should have said, with LL Cool J. And by the way, most people know who that is. He's been in movies, he's done TV shows, he's done music and all that. So yeah, I actually kind of like President Biden. I'm not going to say political stuff or anything like that. We don't talk about that on the show, but I kind of like him. He seems like a, approachable person, down to earth, blah, blah, blah. But he just comes off as a buffoon so much. It just, I've never seen the buffoonery like I have with that. Yeah. So, well, Ted, I want to let you know we have another Misspeak of the week.
Oh, good.
The San Francisco Giants and Arizona Diamondbacks played recently, I should say. And Giants announcer Dwayne Kuiper, who's a former Indian.
There you go.
Finished his call of an inning and apparently thought he was in a commercial. Well, guess what? He wasn't.
Sharply on the ground to Marte, who will make the play and end the inning. We'll continue this conversation when we get back. D-backs are coming up. I gotta pee. Oh, well.
The old syndrome. At least he didn't swear.
That's, yes.
Swear.
Yep.
I gotta pee. We all do it. Pee. We all know it.
What's like broadcasting 101 with regard to microphones, Ken?
Pretend as though every mic is always open.
That's right.
That's it.
You're near a mic, assume it's on. Time for another Cleveland history lesson, and our Cleveland historian, John Grabowski, is back with us. And John, I don't know if it's the heart of the city, but maybe the brains of the city. I don't know. Some might say it's not. I don't know. But Cleveland City Hall, right down there on Lakeside, an old building, an historic building. It's part of the mall complex, if I'm not mistaken. What can you tell us about Cleveland City Hall?
Well, it is part of what was known as the Cleveland Group Plan, which was a progressive ideal based in large part on the structures that were in the Great Exposition in Chicago in 1893, the World's Columbian Exposition. And so they decided to take what we now call the mall, which was the seediest part of downtown. It was loaded with bars and houses of ill repute, and they basically cleared that out to make a wide open space. And the county courthouse is one of the structures. They're all Beaux-Arts structures that were built there. So you have the county courthouse. City Hall was opened in 1916. The public auditorium is there. And up to the north, you've got the oldest structure, which is now the Metzenbaum Courthouse and the Cleveland Public Libraries. They all share that type of architecture. And so they turned this into an open green space. And one of the plans for the green space ultimately was to have a railroad station right at the north end where the tracks are. And that was nixed because it was just too busy with freight trains, and the Van Sweringens had a different plan to build Cleveland Union Terminal. But that's for another podcast. We can talk about that. But City Hall is interesting. And it's a fantastic structure, that two-story open court when you come in. It houses basically the Cleveland Hall of Fame. There's one of the copies of Archibald Willard's painting of the Spirit of 76 that's hung there. It has two basements. It has a basement and a sub-basement. But what fascinates me about it is the first city hall that Cleveland had that the city owned. First city hall in Cleveland was 1803. It was in a log cabin. And from that time on, the city continued to rent space until 1916 when the current one was built. There was a plan in the early 1890s to build a city hall on Public Square, the two north quadrants. And there's going to be a sort of an arch that would go over Ontario Street. and they actually broke ground for it, but the public was so upset about the loss of public land that they quit. Okay, they didn't do anything with it, and so J. Milton Dyer is the architect of the hall, and he's a famous architect in Cleveland. I believe he did the Tavern Club and a number of other things. People can look him up, but it goes to show, I think, you go from a log cabin in 1803 to this magnificent hall in 1916. And that speaks of the rise of Cleveland. And I think I've said this on podcasts before. In 1910, Cleveland was the sixth largest city in the nation. In 1920, it was the fifth largest city in the nation. Wow. So this is Cleveland showing its power, its wealth, its belief in inevitable growth. And the group plan itself is something that was recognized by architects all across the country. And it's amazingly, because it was a cooperative project in which Tom Johnson, sort of the radical Democratic mayor of Cleveland, actually worked hand in glove with people of the Republican Party just to get the group plan going. Historical Society has a wonderful set of drawings of original configurations for the group plan. Things didn't turn out exactly as they were planned, but they came out. Yeah. And now, of course, we're talking about that section between the courthouse and City Hall, maybe, building a huge bridge over the railroad to get to a whole new lakefront development. The one thing, I'll be honest, that upsets me is that rise in the landscape over the convention center. So if you're at the south end of the mall, just behind the public library, you used to be able to look out to the lake. You can't see it now because of that green rise.
Yeah.
And then there's the Medical Innovation Building. One wonders what's going to happen with that. The Cleveland Board of Education building was part of the group plan. It's not true Beaux-Arts, but that's now a hotel. So all of that, that's going to shift. But that green space is wonderful. It came at a cost, though. When they cleared out all the residents, they didn't give them any place to go.
Wow.
No new housing. It was basically, you're gone.
Wow.
And that was the same thing when they cleared out the site for Cleveland Union Terminal. You moved out, you found your own. There wasn't the alternative housing built for you. So there's one of our students, Daniel Kerr, wrote a book about homelessness in Cleveland, and he talks about these two things. So, there's another side to the mall, but it is one of the things that reminds us where this city stood in the early 20th century.
That's really wild.
It's a marker. And City Hall is worth the visit. If you're going there to pay your back taxes, that's fine. If you're going there for a visit just to see somebody, that's even better. But take the time to look around at that really magnificent structure. The mayoral office is just spectacular. It's decorated with portraits of past mayors. There's a lot of good iconography and artwork in the hall, in City Hall. As I said before, a long way from that 1803 meeting, actually for the township trustees, because there was no city at that time in Cleveland, in a log cabin. Yeah.
John, that is a beautiful building. I have had the opportunity to be in it a couple different times. To your knowledge, was that design, did they piggyback that off of another building that they saw, or was that just an original design that they came up with?
I really don't know. I think it's an original design, but it's built on basic, classical elements, Beaux-Arts elements of architecture. And it is, in a way, it's not a clone or a pair, but it matches the county courthouse.
Yes.
Yeah. So those two are really good anchors of that. And it's interesting because what we know behind the City Hall now, which is this, the Brown Stadium and whatever else, that wasn't there. There were just the railroad tracks there. And prior to the group plan, there was a park where the City Hall was called Lakeview Park. Now, it wasn't the most healthy place or salubrious place because the trains ran down there. It was a busy railroad track. And these were steam engines and smoke. And of course, City Hall was built on that park. And, if you remember City Hall from the 50s and 60s, it was dirty, it was filthy. One other major renovation, $2.9 million renovation of the hall in 1994.
Wow.
Cleaning and everything else. So, and And you'll see this with Cleveland buildings. You know, Cleveland Union Terminal was dark until they cleaned it. And that's basically coal-fired furnaces, pollution, smoke, you name it. And we've really cleaned up our act, and we've cleaned up a lot of our famous buildings to look like they were intended to be, not dark and dingy.
Well, Cleveland City Hall, I've had the pleasure to be there as well. It's a fascinating old building. It's just the more you're there, the more you find new, unique, different things. And anybody who thinks we need a modern city hall doesn't know what they're talking about. Just modernize that one. That one's just fine.
That's fine. Yeah, you know, city council chambers are remarkable as well. Yes. Except they were built for a city council of 33 people, and it's kind of an empty place when they have meetings now.
Yeah.
So that's another, as a signifier of where we were and where we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, John, we appreciate the info on City Hall. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Ted, we're out and about Northeast Ohio, supporting local businesses, food, drink, and we've added a new one as well. So hats off. I celebrated my daughter's birthday. She turned 12. Big birthday. Oh. We actually had barbecue from a place called Loggerheads in Medina, Ohio. Very good. Great barbecue. They make their own beer. I would definitely check them out. We actually had a wonderful breakfast at a grocery store, which seems odd. Bueller's, which is in Ashland, Medina, and I think they have locations in Worcester. They actually have a restaurant in the Medina location that my kids and I went to. It was actually really, really good. We went after Mass, and it was excellent. And then, Ted, I've basically had a conversation with myself, and the conversation went like this. Self, you're obese. You need to lose weight. What is going to motivate you to do that?
Yeah.
Instead of working out at home, what should you do? Well, maybe I should just go to a gym. So I joined, breaking news, Planet Fitness.
Oh. Is
many
it
locations.
$10 a month or something?
It is $10 a month. It's pretty wild. I mean, they charge you like some surcharges throughout the year or anything like that. But yeah, $10 a month. I'm using a couple different locations. The one I'm using a little bit more is actually the one in Medina.
Okay.
And I enjoy it. It's all brand new equipment. I mean, for those of us that can't count our reps with some of the machines, they count the reps for you. How about that? They have a rep counter and then tells you how long in between sets and all this stuff. A lot of different cardiovascular machines, bikes, and all that kind of stuff. Very clean. The people are very nice. I'm getting a little concerned.
Yeah.
I know they make their money off subscriptions, so people buy it, and then obviously you can go as much as you want that month for $10 a month. There's many times I'm like one of 6 or 7 people there, and I've gone at like all different times throughout the day, early in the morning, later in the evening, in the afternoon, and it's always like the same amount of people. So I'm not complaining, so maybe I shouldn't say this, but use any machine you want at any point in time. I mean, that's usually one of the biggest issues you have going to a gym. It's like there's so many people, you can't get on the machinery you want. Not at Planet Fitness, whatever you want to do. So hats off to them. That's what I got going for my out and about. How about you? I need some updates here. I know we have some ball to update, and have we taken in any concession stands?
We have it's soccer, football, and hockey are the 3 outs that I have been about with.
Okay.
Let's see, where have we been? We have been we had a game at Euclid.
Okay.
And to be honest, I don't know if their concession stand was open. We'd have to have my wife on.
Were you at the high school?
No, the ice rink.
Oh, the ice rink. Okay.
The ice rink.
Okay.
We've been to a couple football stadiums. Walsh Football Stadium.
Nice facility. Yes.
Yeah. And Akron, Hoban. Akron.
Very
Hoban.
nice as well. Yes.
Yeah. Those are all good. Let's see, the soccer team, I don't know. I think they tied last week, and I don't know what they did Saturday. I was not in attendance for that one. I was a hockey dad.
Okay.
We had a win for the 5th grade football team 2 weeks ago, and they were off this week. The 6th grade football team has won 2 in a row, including posting I think it was an 8-zip win, or maybe it was 14-8. I can't remember, which is awful. But they beat a team who hadn't lost in 2 years.
Jeez.
How about that?
Wow.
And then
it's been in the air raid offense.
Yeah,
You went in the air raid.
There was an air show of sorts. And then this past weekend they beat, I don't remember the team, but they won 32-6. And my oldest son, actually, they put him in the backfield on the last point after attempt and gave him the football.
Awesome.
He did not score, but he was excited about it.
Good for him.
So that was good. Hockey, our youngest son, well, that team is struggling.
Okay.
They have yet to score a goal in 2 games.
Oh, okay.
They've been beaten 10-0 and 6-0.
Okay.
They've had 49 and 48 shots against them.
Okay. Well, obviously nothing. We're going to move up. We're just going to, we're at the bottom. We're going to move up. We're going to get better.
This is the preseason. We're still working on it.
Yep.
The squirt teams, my son, middle son, they are 2-0. He was the goalie for 1 game and played well. He gave up 1 goal, and then he was a skater this past weekend and had 2 goals in the game.
Exciting. Awesome.
And then my oldest son plays on a couple teams. He's a skater on one, and they're 1-1. And on the other team where he's a goalie, when he's played, they are 1-0-1. They won 1. They tied a game over the weekend with 34 seconds to go.
Oh, wow.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
So,
well, Ted, long season. Obviously, we're in the preseason. We'll be having these conversations from now, and hopefully this is sobering for you, probably until about April.
It's March, and it's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
It's a full marathon.
Yes.
And when you say the word skater, I think of Tony Hawk. So I'm thinking of these kids on a skateboard, with nice haircuts and jumping around.
No.
Just where I'm at.
No, yeah, I got you.
That's outstanding. Well, Ted, very impressive. Congrats to the youth teams that you're following with your kids. And I know obviously they're playing their best. You've seen some wonderful stadiums. Hats off once again to Planet Fitness, Bueller's, and Loggerheads. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, continue to support your local business and be out and about just like us.
All right, we're back with our handicapper, John Ryan, who shared an amazing story with us a little bit ago. Now we're going to turn our attention to what John's doing nowadays, handicapping. And as most of us know, here in Ohio, legalized betting started at the beginning of the year. But I'm going to guess that a lot of folks might be dipping their toe into the water for the first time, might not know exactly how to bet, what's the safest way to bet. Me, for an example, I follow sports, but I've never bet on sports. So how do I get started if I don't want to lose my shirt, my house, my bank account, my wife and kids? All right, well, it might be kind of quiet, but the rest of those things, how do I do that safely?
Well, I mean, you bring up a great point, Ted, right away, is that, being open and honest to your spouse about this, because I have experienced this time and time again where it's done kind of privately, especially if generally it is a man, starts losing in an accelerated fashion. And then that's why I always say bet with your head not over it. I do it with mine, and it's fun. Just yesterday, I was on the Washington Commanders, and it was kind of like, you're going against the Eagles? And yeah, it's fun then, right? But I bet numbers. I don't bet mascots. I don't bet teams. So when I look at the betting lines, there is no emotion. And I learned this with trading in the pits up in New York City when I was on Wall Street. And that's really where this all began a long time ago. And it was before I was even diagnosed with that cancer story. But it was around 1997, 98. I was in charge of our crude oil operations, heating oil, leaded, the works. It was a team of 32 traders. Always had a meeting on Friday afternoons. And then after that adjourned, the one trader came up to me, one of our better ones, and he knew that I was building out the first set of price pattern recognition systems and neural nets, which sound like big words, but it really isn't. I mean, the technology has been around. The mathematics has been around sometimes for 500 years. And we've just been able to, augment it to, current life the way we know it. So anyway, he says to me, John, you realize we could make a fortune if we did this with sports betting? Obviously, this is before sports betting was even considered ever to be legal. It was certainly taboo in most circles. If you were known as a bookie or a gambler or something like that, it was always tied to how many mob movies do we have that have a bookie in it that, is taking huge bets and then the poor guy can't pay. But anyway, I told him flat out, I said, you are out of your mind. There is no way in God's green earth there's anything that we can do intelligently to make money in sports betting. It's a coin flip. And I probably said arrogantly, I don't bet on coin flips, referring to the markets. So he eventually got me to the point where I created a small database, and there was that eureka moment where it was like, oh my goodness gracious, this stuff can work, and it works historically over many, many years. I didn't know anything about the industry. I was like a new sports guy. I researched the industry, and they had those Saturday morning shows. And I understand they still have some. But it was literally like, hey, we have inside information that the quarterback's breaking up with his girlfriend and he's going to be playing like crap this week. And we got a whole bunch of other things we know about the locker room. And this is one of those games you can bet everything you own on the game. So I'm sitting there on a Saturday morning thinking, do people actually believe this? Or is this like a comedy like the wrestling is?
Wait a minute. It's legit. I want to bet on wrestling.
There you go. I think that's a fixed sport. I do believe that would be fixed.
Don't burst my bubble.
Well, we'll talk about
okay. All right. Fair enough.
Last night, yeah, that's funny. So anyway, I realized that the industry was just full of shady characters, put it nicely, and I thought, wow, as a hobby, maybe I can just do this with a little bit of integrity, teach people what betting systems can do, and just help. It wasn't meant to initially to make money. So I started doing that. And then, of course, we have the diagnosis in December 2000. Wall Street career is over. But while I was in the transplant in the days that I was capable of doing it, I was doing MBA at this point in time. And I had a handful of clients. And maybe it was the chemo that made me smarter, but I went on this unbelievable run. And then it suddenly started getting around. The internet was in its, infancy at that point. And through that all of being down at Johns Hopkins, I started building a client base. So that actually really helped, medically and mentally while I was going through those horrible times, because it gave me something to look forward to. It gave me a game to watch on the TV, and gave me something to think about that wasn't, related to, am I going to die? And it really was a great distraction and a healthy one. So then after the advocacy days were over, around 2008, 2009, I kept this on the back burner. So I had various corporate jobs, but it was always a hobby. It was still taboo. Nothing was legalized. Then it was around 2016, 17 that I saw the wave starting to happen, that this was going to happen in New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania, and eventually it was going to be all 50 states at that time. So I tried to prepare myself to get ahead of the wave, start doing some more shows, learning how to do YouTube and all that good stuff, these podcasts. And, here I am today now. But along the way, I'm just fascinated with anything numerically oriented, just like the markets, and I think one of the things we can talk about right now is sentiment. Sentiment is huge, and it correlates, in my opinion, 100% to Wall Street. We have a correction going on in the marketplace now, and prior to that market, there really wasn't anybody saying anything bearish, right? It was, we all feel good. There was very little fear of a correction. Prices are just going to keep going higher. It'll be another 6 months, and Apple will be $4 trillion in market cap. And that's where I learned this actually from a guy you might have heard of called Warren Buffett.
Mm-hmm.
And very simply put, he describes the market as you have fear on one side of the seesaw, you have greed on the other. When greed gets at the peak, that's when you have the tops, because everybody thinks, they're not worried about it going down. It's just up, up, up and away, and we're going to make a fortune. That's when the tops happen. And on the bottoms, it's a direct opposite, where you tell somebody, and I tell Ken, I just bought 100 shares of Tesla. And Ken says, "You did what? Are you crazy? That's the worst thing you could have done." But that's generally, and not to say that Ken doesn't know what he's doing. I'm just trying to make an example.
Wow.
But those are the
That's
bottoms.
a question, John. I'll leave it at that. That's definitely a question.
This is not rehearsed or scripted, obviously. But just last night, Kansas City's playing the Jets, and it was pretty rough day, I think, for the amateur bettor, to say the least. So what does an amateur bettor do? Unfortunately, they're down on the day. They want to win it back. Now, your choice of the nighttime game is Kansas City and the Jets. Given the situation of both teams, who's the amateur going to bet on?
The Chiefs.
Right, Kansas City.
Yep.
So and this was the highest of the last couple of years. There was 82% of the tickets taken by the sports books that I tracked. There's 12 of them on Kansas City. So it was already irrational exuberance before the betting public really joined the frenzy, because the ones trying to win their money back. And of course, nobody in their right mind other than myself would have had the Jets, but I only had the Jets because the numbers told me to be on the Jets. So it was, a heck of a game. But look what happened at the end. And nobody can predict this. What happened at the end was Mahomes, on third down and goal, I might add, he's got a clear path into the end zone to score the touchdown that puts him up 10 and ends the game.
Yep.
What does he do? He slides on the 3-yard line, ball gets put at the 2, and the clock runs out. That was a swing of tens of millions of dollars for individuals in the books, and the books came out on top. It also wrecked a lot of teasers. It also wrecked a lot of money line parlays, and that's why casinos don't go broke and sports books don't go broke. They're doing it for a reason. They're not giving you handouts. That this is really easy to do, because it's extraordinarily hard to do, and I don't think people realize it. But anyway, that was a huge win. But my models would never be able to predict that Mahomes is going to take a knee. If it did, then we could ask for a prop bet and make a fortune.
Yeah.
But that, I think that sentiment thing is a very big thing for people to follow right away. And then with my live in-game betting, it's like me trading in the crude oil pit. If I like the Jets, or what was the one over the weekend? I think I shared it on Twitter. You guys probably saw it. Penn State.
Yes.
So the line on Penn State in the beginning of the game, basically 26, 27 points. At one point during the first half, Penn State was -8.5, -9.5. And it was so ridiculously priced, in my opinion, and my research, that I tweeted it. And I thought, this is just an incredible betting opportunity. And I always emphasize opportunity. Nothing is for sure. But then Penn State gets their act together and kind of blows Northwestern, out by the end of the final game. But those are the times where you think, oh my God, why would I ever do that? Because it just doesn't feel right. Penn State isn't playing well today. It's 10-3. Northwestern could upset them. Everything is against you at that point. And you have to get used to doing it because of that contrarian mode. You have to do it a few times. Maybe you do it on paper. Nobody says you have to bet. You can test some strategies out yourself before you apply any money to it. But the live in game, I think, especially in the NBA, which is right around the corner, most volatile scoring sport there is, you get 10-point runs a lot of the times during games. And it usually results in a timeout and commercials, giving you plenty of time to bet the other team after a 10-point run. And that works. That's something that we've been doing for a couple of years now. The problem is, unlike the market, you can't place orders ahead of time. If I could do that, which they'll never allow, then I could have my plan of action and put all my betting tickets just like you would do in the market. I want to buy Apple at 175. I want to buy another bunch at 172, another bunch at 168. Same thing in my live in-game betting. And it's all based on specific formulas, volatility quotients, how the game might be played. Over the last year, there's been 32 games in which both teams had at least a 7-point lead in the NFL.
Wow.
So there you go. And Kansas City is the one that has the most games like that. The higher the total, the more the volatility can be expected. So if you have a total in college football of 75 or higher, you can bet it's going to be a pinball machine. Even if it plays under and there's only 60 points, that's a lot. I mean, it's up and down the field, like Ole Miss and LSU on Saturday night. If you people listening didn't see that game, you can easily review it on a lot of different sites. And that was one heck of a game. I mean, that was just one of the most exciting games I've ever seen. But you can't predict those things, but you can get involved by feeling what the game is going right from the start. If it's if it's a dull day in the marketplace and crude prices are not moving around, you can feel that almost in the first hour of the trading day. In football, it's the same way. If the end of the first quarter, it's kind of dull, but the expectations were that it was going to be explosive, there's your opportunity to bet the over. And we did that in the Penn State game, too. That was the second live game tweet. I think it was like 37.5 points.
Yeah.
And Penn State scored, 42?
Yes.
So, I mean, it doesn't always work. And I don't want to sound overconfident, but there are opportunities where you can say, wow, this looks good. It's an opportunity. I'm going to take it.
Well, John, certainly I've learned a lot. Just, obviously we're friends first and foremost, but I've learned a lot just following you and watching your videos, which I highly recommend many people do. And we'll talk about that at the end of the show. And I really appreciate you talking about, your algorithms, how you came up with them, and just the philosophy that you have with betting. Ted and I talked, and our listeners are greatly benefit from your insight and services. Ted and I are proud to announce that with your help, we are going to be providing the John Ryan play of the week during the football season. Each podcast, we will give a play that you recommend to help our listeners win a little bit of money, but also get an idea of how good your handicapping works. The first time we were on, unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties and weren't able to do it. You gave us the Colorado game versus TCU, where we took Colorado plus 23. John, that was a winner. And many of my friends decided to jump on that as well. As we look in for the next week, I believe we're in week 5 now, which is just crazy for the NFL. Is there any games that our listeners should take a look at, or what recommendations do you have?
What's the play of the week?
Well, I think
we need a big voice, don't we, Ken? The play of the week.
Oh, you'll do that. You're very talented.
We'll get Big Voice Jay on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling down here. I think, I've been riding the Penn State wagon here pretty heavily this year, and it's all because of the research I learned, following Drew Allar, the quarterback, 5-star recruit, sophomore, has a cannon of an arm, very accurate arm. He wasn't so accurate the first half of Northwestern, but Penn State is the type of team that when things aren't going quite right, it's almost like the Eagles. If Jalen Hurts is a little bit off, the passing game isn't there, the defense is taking it away, they immediately go back to the run and say, okay, stop this. Because if you do, then we're going to go back to the pass.
Yeah.
And I think James Franklin's done a great job with that, with his coordinators recognizing that simple fact. The safeties come up, you can expect play action pass. And I think you will see Penn State in the future throw more bombs for touchdowns And I would like to see that done against Ohio State and Michigan, to be honest, because I do have a pizza money bet. And when I say pizza money, for those who are listening, it's exactly that. Some of you should be betting, slices of pizza if you're brand new at it. So what? If you bet $2 and you win, you won $2.
Right.
And you're learning. Every time you make a bet, win or lose, you want to come away with learning something and gaining experience. But Penn State, I think, is a team, along with Texas, that I put together to be in the championship final. So last I looked with Penn State, they were 16-1 to win it all. The one I really like better than that is Drew Allard to win the Heisman. Okay, so you're listening, you're thinking John Ryan doesn't know anything about anything if he thinks this kid's going to win the Heisman.
Yeah.
But this is where you find value, in my opinion. You gotta make these calls before the facts happen. And by doing pizza money, if Penn State loses to Michigan, Ohio State, you're not going to lose sleep over it. If it's $10, $20 max, but you're getting 35-1 just in case.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you, if Penn State keeps playing better and better, which they are, week after week, and they knock off Ohio State, who doesn't seem to be like the Ohio State of years past, who has Michigan played? I mean, it's literally almost embarrassing schedule. It's unbelievable to me. I mean, they're playing Minnesota this week, and
I like when you have Michigan and embarrassing in the same sentence. Those words, for me, they go together.
Yeah, I on any given Saturday, I can fully agree with that. Definitely, but I think if I'm right, Penn State actually has off this week, but I think Drew Allard at 35-1 is worth pizza money.
Okay.
Because if they defeat Michigan, Ohio State, and then have a chance to go undefeated, you can bet at least $1 that he's going to be in contention and in the conversation for the Heisman. Especially if one of those guys out west, like Caleb Smith of USC, stumbles in a game, or the kid from Oregon stumbles in a game, and Penn State's sitting there undefeated. The odds are much better to have 35-1 with a player who's leading the team in that direction than you would get on Penn State itself.
Yeah.
So
that's super exciting for many folks here, John, because I think you know this. Drew Aller is from Medina. That's actually where my kids go to school. So he's a local guy. So we actually have quite a bit of people from Medina and all that listen. So you've just made their day. John, you're making people happy left and right. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
That's good. How I have a question for you, being local. How in the world did Ohio State let that kid slip through their hands, or any of the other Ohio schools?
It's a great question. The story that I was told, because I know there's some people that are interviewed, what I was told is that James Franklin from the start started and recruited him. And he was very interested. He's a loyal kid, and they just recruited him throughout. They never stopped recruiting him until he signed the dotted line. And Ohio State didn't really have an interest, didn't really talk to him. They had some other quarterbacks they were looking at. And at the 25th hour, they were trying to get him in the mix. And he said, no, I'm interested in James Franklin at Penn State. That's how that story went, which is, in all honesty, crazy. Here's a guy who's like 6'3", 6'4". He's like the weight of Ben Roethlisberger, a big guy. He can run. He's got a can of an arm. And I agree, he's just going to get better. But hats off to Penn State. They recruited him early and they got him. So,
hey John, if folks want to follow you on social media, go to your website, where can they find you to get more picks?
You can find me at the predictiveplaybook.com. There's no it's www.predictiveplaybook.com. On Twitter at John Ryan Sports and the number 1. Let's see. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, but those aren't really the main focus. I think if you go to the YouTube channel, Predictive Playbook, you'll get easily all the videos. And plus, there's links on my Twitter feed to those videos, and they're quick hitting 10-minute segments, giving out a pick with a betting system that you can write down and track yourself and use forever. A lot of these systems are 20 years in length and haven't had more than 1 or 2 losing seasons. So if you just have the discipline, I know it takes the excitement out of it. My gut's telling me to bet Texas or, whatever, your favorite team. This is a discipline way of generating profits. And you may not win every single week, but you have the proof of the pudding and the results behind it that have shown that this system makes money. No guarantee that it's going to make you money this year, but it stands to reason that you have a great probability of making money. So I think that's a good thing to do. For my bet of the week, real quick, if there's time.
Yeah, of course, John. We have plenty of time. Yeah.
Texas Longhorns this week. I don't know where it's going to grade yet. My 10-unit plays have done extraordinarily well. They're 5-1 to start the season. This will be another one. And I definitely think Texas is going to take care of business here. The line's only 5 right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see it drop a little bit to 4.5, but below that, I think it's not going to happen. One of my best friends in all the world lives in Texas, outside of Austin, but he went to Oklahoma. And every year we have a little gentleman's bet. It's usually, a 6-pack of a beer of your choice. But every year we do this, and Oklahoma is going to have a bad taste in their mouth. They got, I think it was 49-0 last year.
Yes.
And this is a storied rivalry. This is going to be, blood, sweat, and tears on the football field. Neutral location, the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. It's the marquee game of the week. But I do think Texas is just too much right now to think that Oklahoma could pull off the upset.
John, exciting stuff. What a pleasure it was to have you on today. Thanks for telling us where we could find you. Thanks for obviously giving us the great information. It actually gave us 2 bets. I mean, here we go. We got Drew Aller to take him on the Heisman, and then obviously take a look at Texas. We'll take a look at that line as we move closer to the game. But right now it's at -5.5 versus Oklahoma. So that'll be super exciting. But John, before we let you go, and it's one of my favorite things. And when I started watching your videos and all that, it was, for me, super exciting to hear this. Before we let you go, on your YouTube or anytime you finish out a video, you close out the show with a great saying. It would be an absolute pleasure for myself and for Ted if you can close out our interview today with your closing statement.
It's real simple, Ken, and thanks a lot for having me on again. Always remember, folks, bet with your head, not over it, and may all the wins be yours.
Oh, no, not a dad joke.
What has more letters than the alphabet?
I don't know.
The post office.
That joke was horrible.
We're coming to the end of episode 123. 123 you later. 123 I'm done. I don't know. Episode 123 of Two Middle-Aged Men in Cleveland. And we had a lot on this show.
We really did. And I don't think it was planned that way, but it worked out that way. And it was all really good stuff. Really good stuff. John Grabowski talking about City Hall. What a great building that is. Some great history there. The professor, Rusty Dusty Sloan, talking some Cleveland Browns. That's his favorite topic. Luckily, we're talking about years past in the first overtime game as opposed to what we saw yesterday. Well, that was rough. And then John Ryan. What a story. I mean, it really motivational. You wake up each day and you have an ache and pain. Here's a guy that's, obviously recovering from cancer and kind of basically pushed on in life. And now he's doing amazing work with people with handicapping and all that kind of stuff. So hats off to them. I'm very glad that he's going to be part of our show from here on out. I think for quite a while. And he's probably going to help us make some money too, Ted. I mean, I can't wait to place my bet this week on his recommendation on the University of Texas as they're taking out Oklahoma. Right now, the line is like -5.5, and it'll probably change at the end of the week. So once again, when we're talking about betting, I bet $25. That's like my big bet. Right. I bet $25. That's what I do. There's plenty of sports app. We're not going to promote those. We're just promoting a gentleman who talks about safe betting. So very, very exciting, but really appreciate that. Ted, I got this weekend should be a good time for me.
Yeah.
Reconnecting, have never been unconnected, but reconnecting with old friends.
Oh.
Kevin Strahl, who has the nickname the Human L.
Yeah.
We'll talk about why he's called the Human L. But we're going to take in the AU football game, courtesy of our friend Jason Miller. who,
Uh-huh.
congrats to him. He's the new vice president of development at Ashland University.
Okay.
I never know what your friends are going to be doing when they're older. And when I knew Jason as a freshman in college and we used to spend time together, I was thinking, what's he going to do? And he's had a very successful career, so hats off to him. But Kevin and I will be taking in Ashland football. We're currently 3-3. They'll be taking on, and this is a game I think we called them back in our days of Sports Time Ohio. They'll be taking on the Walsh Cavaliers.
How many times during that broadcast will I have slid in the Cavaliers?
I think a lot. I'll have to go back to one of the CDs and look at that. 7:00 kick, and then we'll be bunking up. When's the last time you had to stay with somebody other than your wife in a room?
I can't remember.
Can't remember. Yeah, we're gonna bunk up there in the old Wingate on 250.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're running out of beds, so I think it's gonna be a single bed, 2 men. So we'll see how that goes. So,
okay.
but yeah, just enjoy the weekend and it'll be fun. So, and then my son has got a cross country race, big race for the Medina Festival. He runs on Saturday, and then I'll be doing some volunteering, which will be fun. They obviously, to keep costs down, they ask for people to volunteer. I'll be working the finish line chute for the races from 9:15 to 11:15. So what does that mean? So when these kids run their 3.1 miles and get through the finish line, it is my job to make sure I pick them up and move them along. I can't find a better job for myself with that.
What are they expecting them to collapse at the finish line, or what is that?
If you've been to a cross country race, and I know some of you listening have, yes, a lot of kids collapse.
Okay.
So
the job is to holler at them, to get them up and stand them up and
stand them up and keep them moving.
Okay.
Keep them moving. So I'll be doing that. I'll obviously have some great stories for you in 2 weeks.
Can't wait to hear this.
I'm excited for that. So
I want to know, can we put a microphone on you during that?
I think we could do something, yeah, or a body cam or something. I know people are going to be interested in this. So
yeah,
of all the people,
move it. Get out of the way. Coming through here. This is not a rest area.
Move along, please. Please keep moving along. I've upgraded because last year I was collecting chips because the kids wear chips on their shoes for timing. So that was my job last year. Hey, let's have your chip. Give me your chip. Undo your shoe. Give me your chip. So now I've gone from chip to moving people along and picking them up. So I can only imagine what I'm going to have to do next year. So,
yeah. What's the next step up? What are you, the track announcer, or are you
starting the race?
Oh, you have the gun?
Yeah.
Or what does that guy do when it's all? His job takes 1 second.
Yeah, my father's done that for years. Okay. Cross country is the way to go. You shoot the gun and go in the car, then you're done. Unless there's
the 19th hole, right?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, so yeah, that's what I got. I know that you'll be taking in some sporting events.
And so we'll be somewhere at a hockey rink or a football game or a soccer game. God only knows.
Do you look at the schedule ahead of time, or do you just like the night before say, okay, this is what we got, I'm just doing it?
Ken,
how do you deal with that?
I know this is an audio-only podcast.
Yeah. I'm
just going to call up my Outlook calendar.
Oh, good. Okay. We can describe this well so the listeners understand.
You see all those different colors? Those are all
what you're showing me right now. I would envision, I know there's some people I work with where they basically have on their desktop every icon possible that you can't even see your screen. As I look at your Outlook, that's what this looks like to me. It's like I'm looking at like 30 different things right now.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable.
Well, here's the best part. My wife and my youngest son are going for a Cub Scout camp out this weekend. So I have to pull this stuff off by myself this weekend. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, get the bags ready. Make sure you got the right equipment.
We can only hope.
Let's get that going. Well, Ted, great show. Pleasure. Once again, sorry to everybody who was expecting this last week. Life just got on the way, but we'll be back on track here for the next 2 weeks. And one last reminder, special thanks to John Grabowski, John Ryan, Dusty Sloan, and of course, listeners. Just remember, we're just two middle-aged men in Cleveland.
Two Middle-Aged Men in Cleveland is sponsored by Westminster AV, custom audio-visual packages for all occasions.
You don't have any rants?
I'm trying to think if I have a rant or not. Not real. I mean, I do have a rant, but I can't do it here.